What do y'all think about samples? This is a topic that I've kind of been obsessed with recently. It all started by me watching videos about the story behind the greatest songs of all time, and I noticed a pattern. Most of them are sample something. Almost all of them sample a different song or do something like of that sort. Specifically, like more on the hip hop side and R&B side, which is normal. Period. Hip hop literally started off like that, like using samples, using beats like that. That's not the problem. The issue is the current state of sampling right now. I also mean like sampling old songs using samples from loops from sample packs. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm covering all types of sampling today. Anyway, so I really need to rant about this, and I want to know people's opinion on it. Also, before we start, I want to say, check out the low bit trip. So I guess I would start by saying, don't get me wrong. I think sampling takes a lot of skill. A lot of people think it's lazy. A lot of people consider it as an easy escape, right? And to a certain extent, I do agree. To a certain extent. Also like to say that I see the skill it takes. For example, recently, like I said, I've been watching a bunch of videos about sampling. I myself got interested. I'm like, let me give it a shot. Because when I make music, I usually do it in VST or I record my guitar, right? But I've never used sample packs or a sampled song, right? You know, I wanted to get into it because it interested me a lot. And I do like the vintage sound that it gives. And let me tell you, it's a lot harder than you can think of. When you see someone just sampling, like doing random things with their little pads, like in their little MIDI keyboard, you're like, oh, that looks easy, like, oh, anyone can do it. And yeah, technically anyone can do it, but can anyone make it sound good is the point. You also have to isolate a specific part of the song, like the vocals or the drums or the bass. That by itself is also kind of time consuming, right? I mean, with all the technology these days, it's not that difficult, but it's like an extra step, right? Another thing is that you have to know basic music theory, and you also have to have like a good ear of what sounds good. I think in general, it's not as easy as it looks, and a lot of people don't understand that. But also, let me tell you what I think about the other side, because I think the opposing side has really good points as well. Let me divide it into two parts. So one would be sampling songs, and then the next one would be sampling from sample loops, like to make music. The reason why I am so against it, let me get into it real quick. So whenever my dad has seen me to almost buy a sample pack, and he's like, mijita, stop and think for a second. Is it really worth it? And I'm like, Dad, just let me have fun with my little sample packs. But he's like, no, I'm not letting you spend money on that. I'd rather you learn how to make your own sounds and remix it and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'm blaming it on my dad. This whole video is my dad's fault. I guess I could start with sampling packs, I guess. A lot of people have come to realize if you use sample loops, it's gonna sound the same as everyone else's, and I think that's pretty obvious. There's been instances, or scandals I should say, where people or artists use sample packs in their own songs, but they basically rip off the whole like sample song, like the sample song, not samples, like I'm not gonna say which artist right now, but there are plenty of videos made on that specific situation, and obviously she's not the only one that has done that. Like, I guess in like music creators, like sometimes you can tell like which sounds are from which pack because they're so overused. Also, popular songs use sample loops, like for example Sabrina Carpenter's Espresso, and to me it just comes to a point where they just like, what's the point, you know, because most producers use sample loops of very simple sounds such as a guitar rhythm. It feels straight up unnecessary. I mean, it's not something so hard to do. Like, it's a pretty simple rhythm, and I feel like they use it just like why they could pay someone to, like record a guitar for them and make it more unique to the song. I don't want to completely disregard, because I think are good, it's a lot more accessible for people to make music, if they don't have instruments to play or they don't know how to play an instrument, and maybe the DAW that they're using doesn't have enough variety of sounds to play with. So Splice, for example, can become a good alternative to grabbing samples, although I'm pretty sure you still gotta subscribe or pay something. I guess it's not that cheap of an alternative, but it could be useful for people who just want to mess around with it, or they see a really cool sound and they feel inspired and they want to flip it. Flipping a sample, it still takes skill, but there comes a risk, and that risk is that they don't do anything and they just put it in a song and that's it. I wouldn't see a problem with all that of flipping it, or just, not necessarily like having to alter it, but just throwing it in a small part, but the rest is like unique, right? But then there's people who just take the sample chops and just put it in their song and that's it, and like repeat it, or just put it with assemble it with the other chops and sample pack. It's hard not to fall into that because it's right there, like it's already done, it's already on key, you don't have to do anything. Like if you just put all of them together in a project and it sounds good and you're good to go. A ver, ¿cómo se llama? Venus Theory made a really good video on it. I'll link it in the description if I don't forget, but if I do forget, just look it up. It's not that hard. When you're an avid K-pop listener, you notice little Easter eggs, I would say, which are just like samples that the producers use, and they just throw it in there and they're just obsessed with that sample. Like you can watch a bunch of videos on YouTube of people finding the samples and just saying, hey, why are K-pop producers obsessed with this sample pack? And then they just reuse it and reuse it and reuse it, and every single K-pop song sounds the same now. Okay, editing me is back. It's understandable because it's convenient, and in the music industry, it's a music factory, so they have to constantly be putting out music. Again, back to my original point is that it feels like a waste of resources. That is my number one point that I want to make. I really want to keep emphasizing how I don't think it's bad to use samples. For example, in hip-hop, that is the whole genre of hip-hop is remixing, and in this example with K-pop songs, a lot of the times they don't really alter it that much. Well, there are some that do a good job in my opinion, but most of the time they just add it in there and it does get tiring. For example, with those K-pop companies and those K-pop producers, when they reuse the same sample, it becomes very repetitive and it just so formulaic, and it does not feels like you're listening to the same song over and over again. So mostly my stance on it would be that I just generally don't like sample loops. And there was a point where I wanted to get subscription to Splice. My dad was like, "Oh, I don't think that's a good idea. Just don't. You'll thank me later." And honestly, I do, because I feel if I got trapped in the Splice thing, I would be stuck there and I would just continue using random samples and altering it maybe a little bit, but then in general my song would sound the same and I would feel not as creative anymore. Alright, part 2, sampling songs. This one is where I do get super conflicted, because with the sampling one, I'm kind of decided on one side, which is just to not use them. With this one, this is where it gets a little tricky for me. In general, I don't think sampling songs is bad. I think people get very creative with it, and unlike using loops, this actually takes skill. Artists who pick songs to sample or to remix usually have a reason for it. It's not most of the time it's just oh, it sounds cool, but also a lot of the times is because that particular song means something to them or it has some kind of meaning. I think it can be used very well. An example I can think of at the moment is Reincarnated by Kendrick Lamar. I've been obsessed with that song recently. I watched a video on the breakdown of the lyrics, but also the producing of it. The topic of Reincarnated had to do with sampling Tupac's song, that song, and it was for a reason, to give tribute to Tupac. It's not only a good song, like a bop, as the kids would say in 2016. Like, once I watched that video, I'm like, oh, like, it gave me a new perspective and it made me enjoy it a lot more. It can become very meaningful, but then it also comes to the point where I just think it's unnecessary. Times where people just take out the instrumental. I mean, Reincarnated also just takes out the instrumental, like, he doesn't really alter it. There are times where I feel like it's kind of pointless. An example I can think of right now is Like That by Metro Boomin and Future and Kendrick. So that song basically uses the whole entire instrumental of Everlasting Bass. I feel like I gave a wrong example here because, of course, hip-hop and R&B use samples, even if there is no particular meaning, because that is just how the genre is, like I previously mentioned. And this example is that even now that we have so much material and hardware and tools to make music, at least make something new with it, instead of using the sample without changing anything, like Metro Boomin, you know? There's been so many instances where I look up a song and I find out that they samples most of it, or they use one sound, and it kind of makes me think, is anything original at this point? And no, pretty much nothing is 100% original, because everyone takes inspiration from everybody. I get that, but I mean just more like from original composition. Most of the songs that I listen to just sample a bunch of other songs, and it's kind of getting old at this point. I'm aware that it's probably mostly of what I listen to and not necessarily music in general, but it's just how I've been feeling recently. There are songs where I didn't even realize that they had samples, and it feels like I've been lied to. It's not a big deal, but to me, and for some reason it's such a big deal. And like, more recently Dochi came out with Anxiety, which, by the way, somebody that I used to know, and again, I don't know, maybe it has a specific meaning as to why it was that particular song, but I didn't really find that much. But yeah, again, like, it just feels very repetitive sometimes, but again, I love Dochi, like, don't get me wrong. Bonus round, honorable mention, interpolation. It's kind of like sampling, but instead of using like a sound, it's like a melody. I think it's another point to point out. I think it's more common that people realize. It made me crazy the amount of times that Tony Basil's Mickey has been interpolated. It's like the song that's been the most interpolated, basically. Speed Drive by Charlie XCX, Rose's Apatu. They still do it. It's been years and they still continue to interpolate. Every song that I listen to that I like, I look up what sample did this one use. And I guess that's why in my mind everything has been sampled. This may not be a big deal, but in my head everything seems sampled these days. Let me go to a Reddit. You can always find everything on Reddit. We all draw a line somewhere. For me, the most important thing is a good end product, if not great. Second, to earn my respect, you have to be able to do more than grab and loop. That means that grabbing and looping is fine if the person has the technical ability to do much more, but it makes a choice to keep it simple. See? So, if someone else has it, it means that I'm also onto something. This Reddit thread knows what they're talking about. Alright. My position, I have a plate of sandia here. My position is that sampling only became a thing because music classes were being taken out of schools, and many of rap's earliest pioneers couldn't afford instruments even if they knew how to play them. Sampling. So yeah, Reddit agrees with me, which means I'm right. So if you have a different opinion than me, then step up into the plate. I dare you to tell me your opinion that is not mine. And no, that this is not bait for you to comment and give my video more algorithm. I genuinely want to know your opinion. Anyway, so moral of the story, I guess I was right.